if it's your first time going after black bear, or your second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever, it don't matter. I'm sure you're watching this video to learn something new and refreshing about black bear to help hone your skills as a black bear hunter or up and coming black bear hunter. Let's say you and I are going on a black bear hunt in November. Well, in the mountains, the mountainous parts of Maine, especially in November, there could be snow. How biologists a lot of times going out in the forest with a radio telemetry gear to find those radio collared sows with cubs, they a lot of times stumble upon them just laying on the ground in 4 or more or 6 inches of snow with their cubs tucked up under their thick fur and fat up under their chests and arms to keep them warm. And obviously the male bear will do the same thing. So knowing that, as hunters, as black bear hunters, me and you going on a black bear hunt in November could still feel confident in knowing that we could very well spot a bear sleeping on the sides of a oak ridge somewhere in the mountains of Maine in November on a November bear hunt. Black bear are the most efficient hibernator. It's not that they're not true hibernators, but they're the most efficient and the most adept at hibernating. And what's really neat about black bear hibernation, you've got to think of it as like a light switch that turns on and off. It all stems from evolution and adapting. Black bears have the ability to have to hibernate or not hibernate. They can really, they can go either way. All right, so now let's get into black bear denning behavior. A lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you is backed by actual research from black bear biologists. Now, what's really neat about black bear is black bear, I don't know if you've ever heard of this yourself, but I've heard it from actual biologists in the state of Maine, and I've read this and heard about it on podcasts and such, that black bear aren't real true hibernators. That I've heard that black bear don't really need to hibernate. And what I've heard on the Clay Newcomb podcast, and it came from a biologist, a guest that Clay Newcomb had on his podcast, this biologist stated that the science now states that black bear are the most efficient hibernator. It's not that they're not true hibernators, but they're the most efficient and the most adept at hibernating. And what's really neat about black bear hibernation, you've got to think of it as like a light switch that turns on and off. Yes, believe it or not, the black bears can turn off whether or not they want to hibernate or not. Black bears are equipped with the physiology and biology and all the hormones and chemicals and and the know-how and the genetics and it all stems from evolution and adapting and evolution and all that. Black bears have the ability to have to hibernate or not hibernate. They can go either way. The cold doesn't affect the black bears. A lot of biologists go out in the wintertime to study their study bears that are radio collared and ear tagged and have tattoos in their lips and stuff. The biologists will go out in the wintertime with their telemetry gear and to find these radio-collared bear. And a lot of times they come upon a so-called DENS black bear sow with cubs just laying on a ground nest. They're not even up under a rock crevice or in any type of cave or under an uprooted tree or in a tree trunk cavity or anything like that. The sow, with cubs too, will just be laying there in like 4 inches of snow with her cubs nestled up underneath her breasts and in her armpit areas. And they'll be sleeping just fine, sleeping soundly. Their heart rate's slowed and such. What's really cool, why the cold doesn't affect them through the winter months and through the denning season, is because their temperature, their body temp doesn't lower. They still stay warm enough. Their body temp stays up, but they can lower their heart rate like very, very low to like, I think it's only like 20 something, 25 plus beats per minute versus like right now my Apple Watch is charged. If I were to look at my Apple Watch and click on the heart monitoring mode on the watch, it would probably say that my heart beats per minute 69 to 70. I think I average somewhere between 60 and 70 beats per minute. And that's like in a resting state. When I'm exercising and running and I'm being very active, my heart rate could be as much as 80 something beats per minute. And that's the same with black bears. You gotta figure a black bear in the summertime probably has a heart rate at about 70 to 80 beats per minute. But in the wintertime, during denning season or torpor season, if you will, the time where they just rest up and they survive off of their fat reserves in the winter months, they can lower their heart rate to like 25 beats per minute. But their body temp can stay the same and stay stable. And because of that, and because of their fat reserves that they've packed on in the months prior to the winter, these bear, man, they can periodically awaken and be aroused in the wintertime. On a warm winter day, a sow or a boar, or a sow with their cubs and a boar, they could awaken and move about, stretching their legs and stuff. And they don't go very far from their area that they may be resting and denning up. Yeah, so true hibernators, like woodchucks and groundhogs and chipmunks and other ground squirrels and things, and bats and such, and like raccoons and opossums, stuff like that. They actually go into full hibernation and do not awaken for 3 or 4 months down the road. But black bear can. Almost weekly throughout the winter months, a black bear could be awoken or risen, especially if the day is warm. If it's a random warm day in the wintertime, they can awaken. So there's really no true hibernation going on there. It's more or less a torpor state, like just a heavy resting period, a time where their heart rate lowers and they can go into a deep slumber for days. They can sleep for days on end, for weeks on end, and upwards of a month or more. But they actually periodically awaken and stir and they can rotate and move wherever they're sleeping. Whereas your really true hibernators aren't waking up at all, but they're actually staying asleep, staying in that state of being right through for like 4+ months until the springtime comes. But black bear, man, they're such a unique animal in that they can turn off their hibernation just by the flip of the switch. Now the awakening and the rising of a bear in the wintertime is mostly common with the males, or the boars. And actually, in all reality, the black bear boar, the male black bears, don't have to hibernate really at all, or don't have to go into torpor at all if they so choose not to. But the sows, though, they have to. go into a hibernation kind of state, and mainly sows with cubs. And so, see, sows too, they obviously have to choose a really safe, secluded denning site that's safe for not only her but her cubs. And also, and now that I'm thinking here about sows and cubs denning and their denning behavior versus black bear male or black bear boar denning behavior. This biology research that went on for like 20 and 30 years and is still going on today. I learned this from a Clay Newcomb podcast. He had a biology guest, and she talked about how in their radio telemetry, radio collaring and stuff, and in all their live trapping and tranquilizing and studying and just following their study, their black bear, they were studying as much as like 30-something individual black bear, or so many sows and so many boars, male bears. This biologist said that what they noticed in their research, that the sows chose a home range furthest from any roadways and housing developments and houses, and furthest from any human disturbance and human presence whatsoever, further away than the actual bear, the boars. And I think that also she stated that it was kind of this way because the female black bears, the sows, have a little bit smaller home ranges than the males. It all boils down to the boars go about traveling their home range in search of available sows to mate with in the spring. The black bear's mating season starts, at least in Maine, it starts in May, like beginning of May. And June goes through June into like beginning of July. So May, June, and July, there's like a 3-month window there of opportunity for the black bears to copulate, to mate, and for the sow to become, yeah. And actually this leads into another idea, another thing I'm going to discuss in a future episode. Female black bear's home range being only about 8 to 10, or a lot less than 20 square miles anyway. But what's really neat is this research that I learned from. This research from this biologist that I learned from on the Clay Newcomb podcast. This biologist said that the sows didn't seem to tolerate any type of human disturbance whatsoever. They really wanted to be the furthest away from any roadways, dirt roads, tarred roads, furthest away from human housing developments and houses in general, and any human disturbance whatsoever. And they found out that it didn't seem to matter so much with the boars, with the male black bears, because their home ranges were so much larger, and they just roamed freely about their home ranges, utilizing all the different parts and areas of the home range all throughout the year for different reasons. For mainly the number one reason, for food availability, for whatever food source was hot at that time of year in that part of their home range. Black bears would hone in on that area of their home range. But your sows, they really wanted to have the most secluded, far away home range, and for obvious reasons, really, for the rearing of their cubs. All right, so now all this information I'm sharing with you about black bear denning behavior can really help you, the hunter, if it's your first time going after black bear, or your second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever, it don't matter. I'm sure you're watching this video to learn something new and refreshing about black bear to help hone your skills as a black bear hunter or up-and-coming black bear hunter. So, for example, let's say you and I are going on a black bear hunt in November. Well, in the mountainous parts of Maine, especially in November, there could be snow. But back up to what I mentioned earlier about denning behavior of even sows with their cubs, and obviously the male bear will do the same thing. I mentioned how biologists a lot of times going out in the forest with a radio telemetry gear, to find those radio collared sows with cubs, they a lot of times stumble upon them just laying on the ground in 4 or more or 6 inches of snow with their cubs tucked up under their thick fur and fat up under their chests and arms to keep them warm and stuff and safe. So knowing that, as hunters, as black bear hunters, me and you going on a black bear hunt in November could still feel confident in knowing that we could very well spot a bear sleeping on the sides of a oak ridge somewhere in the mountains of Maine in November on a November bear hunt. And in November, there's still plenty of acorns on the ground. The black bear and deer and moose and your turkey and all your animals that consume acorns, they could dig through a foot of snow to feed on acorns in November and December and January and such and so on. And so the black bear could very well still be feeding on acorns all through November into December. And especially the black bear boars. The males don't have cubs to worry about. The sows actually will go to den a lot sooner than the males, and especially if they have cubs, or if the sow is pregnant. Now, I'm going to mention and talk about in further detail in a later episode about their delayed implantation. Black bear sows have delayed implantation. That's a whole nother subject I'll talk about in a future episode. The sows that are pregnant or already have cubs, they need to go to denning a lot sooner in the year to ensure the longevity of their cubs and stuff and such. So sows in a sense are kind of forced to den, whereas the male black bears aren't, and they could still stay active and moving about and grazing and feeding as long as there's available food and nutrition, and as long as they're able to consume the amount of calories they need that day, each and every day. Those black bear boars will still be up and feeding on them acorns and those ridges and mountains of Maine. And so you and I on a black bear hunt in November, knowing this, we could very well be successful in spotting a nice boar on the ridges, on the oak ridges, and we could put the sneak on and shoot a black bear right in the dead of winter in November and December